Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Greg Grace. I am the 2023 President of Northern Kentucky Association of Realtors. If you haven't already picked up the handouts, the gift cards, cookies, water, please get a ticket to win $50 Visa gift card at the end of the presentation. This presentation has been recorded. It's made possible through a grant from the National Association of Realtors, that Rural Outreach Program. We are from the Northern Kentucky Association of Realtors. Our territory encompasses 12 counties, which Great County is one of those 12. Fun fact for you, did you know that all real estate agents are not realtors? When an agent becomes a realtor, they take it up to protect and promote private property ownership rights, which means we advocate on your behalf in Frankfort and Washington, D.C. Our goal today is for you to walk away with a basic knowledge of septic systems to assist you as a homeowner making one of your largest investments. I'd like to introduce your speakers this evening. Mr. Jake Hanley from the Kentucky Department of Public Health. Jake's a graduate from the University of Cumberland with a degree in public health and sports and exercise, and has been with the Kentucky Department of Public Health for 14 years and serves as technical consultant for the Central Kentucky region. Also, we have Mr. Bob McCandless from the Northern Kentucky Department covering Boone, Hamlin, Kenton, Grant counties. Bob graduated from EKU, has been with Northern Kentucky Health Department with a specialization in septic system for 23 years. You guys ready to get presentation?
All right. Like I said, my name is Jacob. I'm from the Department of Public Health. I have worked at the local level for about 10 years and been at the state for about 3. So I'm fairly new on this side. Dealing with state regulations outside of the county. Obviously, you've got, like I said, Bob here. They've got 4 counties in their district. He's not the only inspector they have here. And there's a newer inspector named Jay. So if you see them out and about, that's kind of who we'll deal with. But mainly Bob, you're the only one in this county. Okay. All right. So like I said, we go out, we deal with regulations, we deal with components that are used in the state. And basically look at soil types. Actually, we have a installer program that we deal with as well. When it comes to the on-site program, Kentucky's either last or first in just about everything. So when it comes to the on-site program, we're one of the few who can say we're at the top. We kind of set the standards in the United States. Florida, maybe North Carolina, pretty close, but everybody else is way up. Right? So I'm going to kind of cover a little bit, some basic stuff. Just like you sitting out there when I first started this, if you don't really have your hand in any type of agricultural deal or anything like that, this is not common sense. It's not going to make sense to you. So don't hesitate to ask questions if you don't understand. You know, it's not something that a couple of months you'll feel, I guess you could say, comfortable. It can take years before you feel comfortable in this program moving forward. Just because every lot that we deal with, county to county, can be different. It's just like human beings. Every lot's different. So from here to that law, dirt can change dramatically. Okay. So you might come across that and be like, well, why is that lot good? Why is this not? Why is this lot bad? It's just the way it works. Okay. Okay. Do we have a volume on this? No, maybe. Hold on. Yeah. Let's see. No, not that. There it is right there. If I mute it, are they going to be able to? Because I don't know, that's kind of built into this.
So
I don't know how to get rid of it.
yeah, so you turned down the speakers, but the mic should still be on.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So wastewater treatment. Okay. So wastewater treatment is protect basically public health, prevents contact with pathogens, microorganisms such as bacteria and viruses. Okay. Prevents contact with toxic chemicals, reduces the pollutants that can contaminate ground and surface waters. All right. So when we put these systems in the ground, the idea is to clean that effluent up. Okay. So we use the soil to clean the effluent up. Basically, if you think about it, and it might come up a little bit later, is that soil pores, if we looked at them under a microscope, are kind of like sponge, okay? The better the soil, the more it can hold and absorb and clean that effluent up. The worse, the harder it is for it to clean that effluent up before it gets to the water table. Okay? So I'm kind of bringing this into play here in Grant County. Bob informs me that there's a lot of what we call heavy clay soil, which is not as good as your heavy silt or loam soil. Okay? It might have that in there, but it's dominant clay. All right. So that takes a lot longer to treat that effluent before it hits the water table, which means we have to upgrade the systems, make modifications to the system in order to reach that point. Okay. So that's the whole deal behind it, is to clean that material up before it gets into the water table and contaminates it before it gets back to us. Okay. So water treatment, cost effective compared to maintenance or municipal sewers. I'm sorry. So basically tying on, I don't have any idea of exactly how much it costs a time, but I know it can be very expensive. When it comes into, if it is available, we're out of it. The health department's out. It's in the regulation that if municipal is available to that property, that there's no getting out of it unless municipal writes or issues you a letter that says they're going to deny you the ability to tie off. But that's rare. Okay. It does happen sometimes in certain counties if there's a large amount of development in a particular area. But that is rare. Once again, I don't get into the cost of that, but it is. I would say that's probably a lot higher than maybe having to install a septic if you don't get into advanced type of treatment with us. Okay. Protecting groundwater supplies, recycles wastewater, recharges groundwater, and utilizes natural filtering properties of the soil, like we kind of talked about. Okay. So soils in Kentucky. All right. Soils in Kentucky consist of sand, silt, and clay. All right. Sand is a very fine particle. It's actually good at filtration, but if it's pure sand, so let's talk about like at the beach. There's no structure to that. So what does water do to it? It just filtrates straight through. So there's no treatment. So you don't want it just single grain sand. You want to be mixed in with the silt or loam. Okay. A silt is typically a little bit better. Obviously, than clay. It helps treat that soil, helps it to absorb better. And then when you get into the heavier clay particles, that's where it slows the absorption rate down. Okay. That's where you have to upgrade, modify your tanks, maybe add additional laterals. Anything else that has to go with that system is when you get into those heavy dense clays. Okay. Pores between the particles, effluent flows through the soil pores, which is what we talked about. The bacteria filters out. The viruses are absorbed and destroyed, and chemicals are retained in that soil. Okay. So what it is that soil can hold that, filtrate it every so often. When you take it out there, these systems are designed to take peak usage, but relax when they're not being used. So heavy hydraulic load. Okay. That might also come up here in a little bit. So what it is systems are designed to, when these systems are installed, based off the soil profile that's there, and based off what you have going on with that particular house. In the morning when we get up, you're ready to go to work, take a shower, doing what we're doing. It takes a heavy hydraulic load. Okay, probably more so in the evening. But when everybody's gone, there's nobody at the house, nothing's being done. It gives you the ability to relax and absorb that effort. Then you come back home. What do? You run laundry, you're eating, you're cooking, taking a shower, all that stuff. Once again, rises back up, takes on that heavy load. Then overnight when you're sleeping, it absorbs back out through there. So that's what these systems are designed to do. If it's continuous and they never get a chance to relax, then you have the possibility of the system failing out because that hydraulic load is never capable of relaxing those sores or those pores in the soil aren't able to rejuvenate back. okay? Because like I said, it's like a sponge. If they're constantly saturating, it's full, it can't hold any more effluent in it, okay? Okay. So this is kind of a picture of how this kind of works. You got your home. I don't know if you can see this. It kind of runs through there. So you got your arrow. Okay. So it comes out. First thing where it comes out, how it hits your pre-treatment. Okay, that's your actual septic tank there. Okay. There's multiple things with septic tanks, and I'm going to kind of break it off. This, if you can, everybody see that fairly well. I know it's pretty light. Kind of see that a little bit. All right. So when it comes into your septic tank, that's basically the worst part of your entire system. Why? Because that's housing solids, your liquids, and your scum. Right? The way these tanks are designed is the bottom half of that tank. The bottom half of this tank is where your solids are going to sit. Okay, it is what it is. If I use the restroom in here, we used to say we're number one and number two business. Okay, so that's where that sits, right? Then we have what's called a clear zone. It's not clear, but it's kind of just a liquid effluent, and that is where it's going to go out your baffle, your sanitary heat, and run out to your distribution box. Okay, everything else is designed in here to where at the top your scum layer sits. So toilet paper, feminine products, whatever it might be. I will tell you this: the least amount that you can put in a tank, or if you talk to a homeowner, whatever that might be, the better. Right? Us at the health department cannot tell anybody no, they can't have a garbage disposal. But what it does is it makes the tank be upgraded by 250 gallons. Okay, so if you have a 3-bedroom house or less, it's an automatic 1,000-gallon tank. Okay, residential requires 1,000-gallon or less, or 3 bedrooms or less. Okay? So if you have a garbage disposal, then that means your tank has to be at least a minimum of 1,250 capacity. But what that means is, it's just an upgrade, not a big deal. Well, the cost goes up at number 2. Everybody seems to think when you throw a garbage disposal on homes on septic, we just chuck everything in the dryer and throw it down the tank. That's not a good idea. Like I said, we can't tell them no. We can kind of educate them and recommend not to put it on. But once again, that's up to the homeowner, or if you all come in to fill out like an application, because that will be one of the requirements on a site application at the local government. Okay? Is they'll ask you, is this home going to have a garbage disposal? Yes or no. Okay. Because what's going on in that tank is that you don't have aerobic that's introduced to that tank. Okay, so it's cut off. So you have a good bacteria and you have a bad bacteria. All right. After about 5 or 7 years, you probably want to pump that tank out. Maybe a little bit more before that, depending on what's going on in the house. Once again, we don't have jurisdiction in the home. We only deal with everything outside. Right. So you want to get that pumped out every 5 to 7 years, because what happens is that solid layer starts to build up, get into your clear zone, which is what goes out to your laterals. Okay. Like I said, when they put chemicals in there, they put food particles, whatever, it takes a beat, or beats down on your good bacteria, fighting the bad bacteria. About 5 to 7 year range is when the bad bacteria typically takes over and kills out the good. Okay. But the more that you push into that tank, the more you do, the least amount of time it's going to last. Okay. So what it is when you get there, they want to come out and pump that tank. There's pumpers out in the state, certified through the health department. They'll come out and they'll clean the whole tank. They'll take the scum, the liquid, and the solids out of the bottom and clean the whole tank. You have to be careful sometimes. The way we teach our new inspectors, so like today, I finished out a training with new inspectors with presentations, is we don't teach you for the people that do the job right. We teach you for the small percentage that we're kind of certain, right? So I train you to get ready for stuff like that. So when they pump these tanks out, you want to make sure that if you're there, or if you're ever selling a home, if you're just going to watch what they're doing, they should take everything out of that tank. You should see the bottom. There's multiple types of tanks. There's fiberglass tanks. Generally, I think here, mostly concrete tanks. Okay, and then you might have plastic tanks. That's your other. And then you have, there's still a few metal manufacturers, but that's very, very rare. So everything you should deal with is concrete, fiberglass, and plastic. Okay. The reason being with plastic, and you don't have to anchor it down versus concrete because you think, well, concrete's super heavy, but you probably have to anchor down plastic. No, you don't have to. Okay, they're designed to hang in there. You don't have to anchor them down, but sometimes when it gets hard to put a tank in, and you have to get a big boom truck back there to drop that off, get that tank off there, you can't do it. You put a plastic tank on the ground, push it into it. They're not that heavy. Okay. So sometimes that just can't work. It's not that easy, depending on if there's a big sloping lot. And if something gets messed up or that tank has to get moved, a lot of times if they ever have to move that tank, it's structurally damaged. Now it's no good. So it's a lot easier sometimes in tight spots to use plastic. But yes.
So there's a pumper in town that says you need 6 inches of sludge. at the bottom,
No,
So that you can have good bacteria.
no. Right.
Nothing to that.
That's it.
One thing I would add about plastic tanks, is you get them pumped out, you need to fill them back up with water because it rains, it will pop out.
So there is buoyancy there and it can raise that up. Correct. I will put it to you like this. I've had, when I was working at the local level, not now, but when I was working at the local level, I would have somebody that maybe getting ready to build a home, but they kind of started the process of when they installed the system first and then built the house later. Well, if there's not anything in that tank to weigh it down, you do have buoyancy. Those things you think it's heavy, they are like 15, 20,000 pounds. They'll float right above the ground. Okay. So what do I normally say to do on those? Like I said, it's rare, not something that you have to say. A lot of times, especially, well, not all the time, but most of the time they should tell them, you're going to want to fill that tank about 18 inches from the top with water. Why? Because that's the process. So especially if you see them in the winter, they're building that, if it's installed, it's going to set empty over the winter, they're going to start building in the spring. I would have them fill it up full of water. Don't take that fluid from somebody else's house and bring it over and fill it up and fill that tank. I have seen that one time. That was a real dry cut. When I opened up that tank, brand new system, I was finding it out. I popped the lid off, full of effluent, there's no house there. I was like, what's the deal? Like, we drew a real fine line that day that if that ever happens, he might be losing his life. I don't really know if we could have made that happen, but that's what we kind of pushed that a little bit, okay? So that's the deal there. Like I said, every 5 to 7 years, we're gonna have those pumps. These septic tanks now that are coming to us, about 2004 or 5, there was an enactment to where you had to put a green sphere riser on that tank if it comes up to grade. So if you see in these new buildings, these new homes, there's a sphere at grade level. Basically, all that is it's secondary safety. So if you take that off, there still should be either a riser lid inside or a concrete lid to take off to get inside that tank. What that kind of means is like we set that up and went through into regulations because it gives you an access point to get into that tank. Older school tanks didn't have to have that. It's only on the outlet too. But older school tanks that didn't have to have that, just set flush. You might have to dig up that in and pump that out. So now it kind of gives you an access point to get in that tank. Right? We're kind of 50-50 on it, okay? Because those gases that do come out of that are toxic. You stick your head in one of those things for a few minutes, it'll choke you out because it is poisonous. Number two, it's just one of those deals where those risers on there are pound for pound solid, but most times if you hit it with a lawnmower just right, you'll break it, you'll tear it up. Now that access point is open. The lids generally weigh anywhere from 70 to 100 pounds on those septic tanks. You just pull them right up off. But the reason we don't like them is because once again, you've created an access point right to the top of it. So you can, you break that riser lid, and let's say they didn't put the lid back on that tank. Now you got an open spot. It's rare, but it does happen. I think that'd probably be an awful death. Number one, drowning and something like that. It has happened. It's happened in the States. I'm going to say 4 or 5 times that I can remember that it's happened. There was an installer in the sun that were working on a septic tank, kind of got down in it and just kind of passed out and didn't come back. So, yeah. So it can happen. So it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. Yes, it gives you the ability to do maintenance on it because you know where it's at, you get right into it, whatever. But also, number two, it creates an access point. So if something ever happens, you will go past these things. Sometimes they'll hit them. If they don't put the lid back on them, now it's a hazard. Okay? It's an access point for a child to fall in and drown. All right. So off those tanks, like I said, you have concrete, you have plastic, which are, I guess, the two general around here. And then you'll head out from there to distribution box if there's not any other pre-treatment that goes along with it. And what I'm saying is if there's not a dosing tank, which is the pump tank that's required, because gravity flow can't be achieved. Okay? Now, you would think gravity flow can't be achieved because why? The septic system's going uphill. That's not always true. If you got a lot that's like this right here, there's no fall. So how are you going to get it to move? You can't have fall on your pipe, get to your lateral line, right? So you might have to put a dosing tank on this. So a dosing tank would fit right after your septic tank, okay? Also, I'll bring this up because we're in this county and because we have heavy clays. I talked about upgrading or modifying the system, right? So when we upgrade and we modify a system, if you have a group 4 soil, which is what we're talking about, a heavy clay, or in the state of Kentucky, we have what's called a restrictive horizon layer, okay? We have to stay off that restrictive horizon layer, at least a minimum of 12 inches, okay? But we want to stay 18, okay? If we have to stay less than 18 off our restrictive layer, this has to be upgraded, which means that cleans the effluent up a little bit more so you get that soil a little bit more clean effluent meant to treat it, versus if we were able to stay off there and we weren't in a heavy clay soil, right? So for instance, here, if you're in a heavy clay soil and we're into a group 4, you have to upgrade that pre-treatment tank. Well, how's that work? This right here is the cheapest way, okay? This is a residential filter right here, okay? Number 2, you have 2 tanks in series. You have that tank, and then your second tank that comes after it has to be 50% capacity of your first tank, okay? So like I said, anything that's 3 bedrooms or less, it's an automatic 1,000 gallon. Every bedroom above that or a garbage disposal is an extra 250 gallons, okay? So if you have a 4-bedroom home, it's 1,250, 5-bedroom home, 1,500, okay? If you wanted to upgrade that, you can do 2 tanks in series. First one being, if it was a 5-bedroom, 1,500. Your second one has to be 750. Right? Or the other option is you have 2 tanks in series, or a two compartment tank. I'm sorry, and that's basically where a compartment's built into that sector, that first tank, and divides it and kind of cleans that effluent up. So right here would kind of be a baffle wall that would come down, split about the middle, and then come up from the bottom. Okay, so what it would do is house more of those solids in that scum in the first compartment. Put that clean, a little bit cleaner that effluent up through there in your second compartment to go out to help with that lateral line, okay? Because you're in a heavy clay soil, or you did less than what we call an separation, right? Off of your restrictor horizon, and we'll get there once we get down to this point here, okay? So those are your upgrades, all right? I don't get into the pricing. Bob might know a little bit more of that locally. I don't know. What did you say tanks are running like right now?
They're about $2,500. Most of ours are 2 compartment tanks. That's the upgrade we choose to use. Because 1, we got either clay soil, or 2, we're going less than 18 inches to that restrictive horizon. So we need some sort of upgrade on the tank. So that's what most of our tanks are, 1,500 gallon 2 compartment tanks.
So yeah, I really don't know the pricing. I inspect these manufacturers, but I don't get into the pricing part. Yes.
Dick, I have a question about the septic tank.
Yeah.
I know you said concrete, fiberglass, and plastic.
Are you general? Yeah.
So I would assume concrete would probably be less than how thick is fiberglass versus plastic? Is it prone to fracturing, cracking, or anything like that?
I'd say concrete's more prone to fracture just because it's set, but it has to have strength. There's a cure test, and they have to meet with the concrete tank. It has to meet a 4,000 psi, which is a strength in a certain amount of time. Okay? Which means when they first pour these things in the mold and they take them out, they have to let them set for so long so they strengthen up. Once it hits that 4,000 psi, they hit it. If they sell it too green, it can break down the ground. Now, with concrete, crazy thing is that the longer the concrete's curing, the stronger it's going to get. But ours is what we look for is 28 days. A minimum on these sidewalls on your tank, bottom and top and side, have to be at least 2.5 inches thick. Right? Now, your plastic and fiberglass are not, but they meet the 150 pounds per square foot other part of our regulation, our component regulations, and that's how we keep those components off there. They provide us with strength information that deals with plastic and fiberglass. So they're not as thick. So they don't crack as much. They tend to house things a little bit better, but they have certain agents that they can mix in these concretes that if it does crack or if it's shifted a little bit, it causes a kind of a little weak point, then it can almost kind of cure itself. But if there's a large structural damage to it, then even if Bob or myself were to see that, or I see that out at the manufacturers, I spray it out, they have to break it down, destroy it, or he'll turn it down and has to go back. If that's what happens. To be honest with you, we don't want to fail it. But the way we look at it is, if the septic tank is failing, I would rather it fell out than take on ground. Why? Because that means all that water's in your system. Just talk about your system needing a chance to relax. It will never relax. Which what will happen? You'll saturate it and fail out. Can be as simple as if you had a leaky faucet inside the house. It was just a constant drip. It can cause the system to fail. You'd be surprised. It doesn't have to be a stage drain or full run. Okay? You could turn that off. 10 days later, somebody could still be living in the home. They fix their leaks. That system might dry out. It's just overused, completely saturated and full. Okay. It's not always the case. Fingers crossed. That's an easy deal. That's not usually how it always works. So you'd be surprised when we go into these homes. If we look, like I said, I typically try to stay out of the home. But if I'm trying to diagnose a failing system, I'm trying to do an investigation to figure out why it's done, what's going on inside the home, what's going on inside, what caused it to fail. Okay. So a leak, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, but a leaky faucet inside of a home where it's just a small drip, whatever, you would be surprised. That can cause your system to fail fairly quick. It's just because it's continuous pressure on the system, never gets a chance to relax it, right? So I'll kick back out here. We'll kind of come back to that part of it, okay? So I said residential filter, 2 tanks in series, 2 compartment tank, okay? Here, they typically use a 2 compartment tank to clean that up. So that means nothing to us as a homeowner. We don't have to get in and out of it. Now, I said this guy's the cheapest way, okay? You do have to do a little bit of maintenance. It takes you about 5 minutes. Well, nobody wants to undo the lid off the riser and then, reaching down there, driving 70, 80 pound lid off your tank, pulling it out. But it's really easy, and this will clean you up. You'll be surprised with these things. Okay? So what is it? This sits on your outlet end, just like this, except for when it's upgraded. Got this piece right here. Okay? This is what filters that up. Right? This is your housing. This is your case that slides inside of it. Put that back in there. Done. All you gotta do is pull this out, and you get it to your tank, pull it out, spray it off with a hose. That's all you gotta do. Okay? I don't know what these are running right now. I don't even ask. I'm gonna say, I don't know, anywhere from $50 to $200 maybe. Okay. Also, if you're lacking or you really need repair in space, take the big space inside the first tank, right? Okay. So this is what's taught at the local level when we start off, when the basic inspectors go through training as well. All right. Put those on there, slide them out of there. You probably only have to clean it, depending on what's going on in the house, every couple of months. Sometimes you can do it, once every 6 months. Just depends. I tell you what happens a lot of time too, is that because they don't want maintenance on them, that doesn't happen a lot, but I'm sure it still goes on a few places. They'll put this on there, inspector will come out, they'll inspect the system, they'll look inside the tank, inlet and outlet. This goes on the outlet. They'll say, yep, there's our filter. All right, it's approved, write it down, they'll finalize the system, done. Installer can go back in there, cut this guy out, take it with him, pocket the money, or just throw it away, and put a T on it. Why? Because then you never have to get back in the tank and check it out. Right? Also, when these homes are sold, they don't get the paperwork, you don't know what's in it. But what you're going to find out is in the back of the house if you don't. Right? So it's a simple fix. If it's in there, It's a filter. It should have a housing with the cartridge in it. And I see them do this, throw that away, there's your TV. Just look exactly in there. Now you don't do anything to it, right? Well, it's there for a reason. Right? So, once again, that's kind of a quick fix, but it does happen. I've seen it. I'll be honest with you. Funny thing is what I do. When I bought my house, I pumped my tank out. What happened? They had never pumped it out. The house was built in 04. I bought it in 17, opened up the lid, and this is where I used to live. Pop that lid on the outlet in. There's supposed to be a filter in there. There's not. It's just a sanitary tape. Wasn't installed when you cut it off. Whatever. So these need to be in there. If you see them, it's causing issues. Don't ever tell anybody to take it out. All right. They do what they're supposed to do. Like I said, or like Bob said, you have 2 tanks in series, 2 compartment tanks, what's used here. All right. When it comes out of there, it's got solid pipe. Okay. So from the house to the tank is plumbing. All right. And they might rock that. When we come out of our tank and go to our distribution box, this is where the effluent is going to disperse out. All right. That's solid pipe. So that's generally 4-inch pipe like that comes out of ABS. Schedule 40 SDR. Okay. We're looking at right here. All right. Goes into your box. So you can have different boxes. All right. I don't have a concrete box with me. Why? Because those guys can weigh anywhere for, some of them can be 150 pounds. But, so I did bring some plastic ones with me today. So you have to imagine that this is concrete box. Same with plastic. These aren't anytime it's something that's used instead of yes, we write on what we call the building ticket, which is their letter. We'll issue that out along with an actual proof. If it doesn't have it on it, it's not been approved. Sometimes the local inspector will call us and say, hey, it's approved or not. If it's not been approved, can't use it. If you submit for it, it's not happening. There's 4 of us for the state. And I cover central defense side about 50. And I'll charge a fee for it. So it's not because I don't like it something. Yeah. So this is how it works. Anyways, you have what we call inside box, and this isn't a really good condition of what we call equal flow. An equal flow would technically be a lot longer, would have a baffle right here, which you slide on down. What these do, and I'll talk about this first, is we call this an equal flow box. Okay? So you have to imagine that this is getting longer, and there's a baffle piece about right here. It sits about 2 inches off the bottom. So when the effluent comes in here from this part right here, so let's say that's this part of the box, or actually this part of the box. When it comes in, it hits that baffle, slows it down, comes underneath there, and rises up. This is what we call the flow box. Okay? What it does is it disperses that effluent equally across your lateral. So if you have 4 lines, 5 lines, 6 lines, depending on how many holes you have in the box, if you have to use all of them, that doesn't have to, you might get 3 lines. 3 lines will force this box. Okay? It dispenses it out equally. But in those lines, and the reason I bring this up is because once again, you're here in a heavy clay soil, those lines have to be within 10% of each other, okay? On that particular box, and when you're in a group 4 soil. So for instance, if you have a line that the longest line is 90 foot, that means the shortest line you can have is 80. So you have to think about that because it's all good and well when we talk about it up here and everybody thinks it's all just parallel. Right? It's not everything straight. It's installed with pump. When these guys go out, shoot it, and they verify when you're out there shooting the bottom of it to make sure it's level, they use a transfer to shoot on it. Right? And you can't look at contour like maybe some of these other guys. If you ever see somebody doing that and they're shooting it out, you'll be surprised. A lot of your lateral lines, some of them will be parallel. A lot of them will not. Some of them will hook, some of them will kind of snake. It just depends on how that line works. But they'll install that on contours, and if you don't, and you install it parallel, it'll do. In the state of Kentucky, the deepest lateral line can be installed is 6 feet. That's it. The showers that can be installed is 6 inches. And we'll talk about the type of lines in a second. So from the very top, if you bring in no soil to the very bottom of the trench, it's 24 inches deep. Well, what if you say, hey, we've been out, we've seen lines that are 6 foot deep. Probably won't fail. But Joe Blow, next year it's on the way. He's gonna find out real quick. Why? He's gonna clean it up when we got the water. So if you do a well water test on the makes it pop up. You go down. It doesn't clean, you have to go down, right? See it happen. We do private water tests too, as far as well systems, but whales especially, that's where they'll come into play. So, like I said, if you have systems, which mainly here in Grant County, probably going to be $4, correct? Okay, because you have higher flow. Right? These guys are spread out equally. Now, when you set a concrete box, take with some sand or gravel, these boxes have to be leveled out so they can use a level to shoot the transit. Yeah, 5 here, 5 here. Whatever. And it'll take what we call these speed levels. Okay. Now, I don't know if you'll ever get to see this, but if you do, you kind of know what I'm talking about. If you're confirmed. These lines that are put in here, they come in this box about at least an inch. And what they do is they'll fill these boxes up with like, they'll take a 5-gallon bucket of water in there, and they'll pour it in the side. And when they watch it go in this box, so it's kind of stay over the top of it, it's pretty vision. And they'll watch that the lines take that water. And then whichever line stops, you take the speed level, put it on the end of your pipe like so, when you pop it in there, you take it and spin it to adjust it to where they want to take you. So maybe this one's taken in August. All right, these two put at the same time, you adjust that up so it's all sticking. Right. If you ever see these, but take them out, throw them away, it's super. They're in there for a little bit. Not just because I'm trying to. So, us as inspectors will see that a whole lot. Maybe if we're out and about or somebody's doing a repair and they take something off, if it's an older system. But you all probably won't see that as much. But if you do, that's what they're there for.
So if somebody says, fair guy says, get just distribution box, you're talking about you're spinning that little thing.
They might. Sometimes it's as simple as if this box gets off balance, this line starts taking more water. Why is it failing out here and not these two? Well, maybe when they came to grade out the yard or somebody did something. You know, a lot of times when we're there, there's nothing going on. The house is being built or it's being finished out. What happens? It's in there. I want to do a detached garage. I want to do a pool. I want to take some equipment on the top of it, whatever. It could be as simple as a lawnmower. It wouldn't quite sell, right? You tip that box. System fell real quick. Why the other lines might not be using this line instead of that. Sometimes it's a simple fix, but you have to get in there and diagnose and figure out what's going on. But that could be the deal. This box right here is what we call a field sign. Use many of those at all in this county. This county. You cannot. Yeah, and that's because of the high clay content. Right? These boxes cannot be used in high clay content. All these boxes can here. Wow. Because you want that effort to spread out equally with the entire system. Raise up, come down. The way these boxes work is when it spills into the box, you can either have a line from this way, a line from this way, or just one off the side. Doesn't matter. When it goes in, what's it do? It goes into that line, fills it up. When it's completely full, comes back, backs up into this box, raises up in that box, and spills down in the next box. So that's not how those work. It's that easy. You don't want to do that here because you don't want to overload those floors. A lot of times what will happen is on these hillside boxes, sometimes you have to. It just typically just wears that first line out until it's completely done and then moves on to the second. Eventually, when that line is completely shot, it was going to box and take the boxes are only used in what we call a better soil. These boxes we use in any soil, but they're only for can only be used in a high clay content soil. Okay. So when we look at a building septic system, I'll kind of kick back to the house before I kick back into the laterals. Okay. When I was talking about earlier, how do we diagnose sometimes with a house? We generally want to pull a year's worth of water usage from that house. I want to see what's going on. How much water? Are you killing it? Did you have a family of 5? You have 2 parents, 3 kids. We're using like 8,000 gallons of water. Quite a bit. It's but it's quite a bit for them. I generally, not because I'm trying to ask anything personal, but I'll ask how the kids are. You got young people. You got teenagers. Wow, they're gonna watch it, not or it's funny because they don't want to put it away. I've got an 18, a 15, and I got 24-year-olds. Okay, so I know how it is. Girls are old, my boys are young. All right, it's constant. All right, they wear that stuff out. Constant showers, washing, changing clothes, and they ain't dirty washing clothes that were just washed. I know how it works. If you're using a lot of water, you're wearing that system out. It's not getting a chance to relax. Okay, so once again, we look at water usage. We do take an effect. Okay, it's springtime going into summer. You're going to be watering the garden. You might water the yard. If you have a pool, we take that into account too. So it's high number. But if it's consistently high, something's going on. Maybe there's a leak in the house. Well, it's not as simple as walking up and going, the faucet's not leaking. A lot of times what we'll do is go inside the house, I'll take a little bit of food coloring. You can do this as well. Take the back off the toilet, put some food coloring in it. Do it when you first get there. And then you can talk, do whatever you do. That's generally what I'll do outside and do myself, come back in. Get about 45 minutes to an hour. Any of that food coloring from the back of that toilet is up in that bowl, but it gets inside the place. Even if it's a small shrimp. Doesn't mean when you pour it in there and come back in there, the whole bowl. It's not going to be. Because you're not going to see that toilet. But if you see small lines of trickle or red or any other color you use, you need to replace that because that's just enough water. If you can't get inside the home, you're unsure, and you've got a clean out on the outside. The white cap sticks up out of the ground right outside the home. It's plumbing. If you can get that cap off there, sometimes they're glued on there. You really have to use some elbow grease. But if you could unscrew that off there, if nothing's being used in the house, you take a couple drops, drop it in that pipe. If that color moves, you know something's going on. If it sits there and nothing moves, nothing's going to do a pipe. So you kind of mix that out. But that's something that you want to get fixed. You can do that for yourself. Can't always tell with the naked eye that the toilet's running. Okay. If a system backs up because the soil's been damaged outside, because when we get there, we look at where the system's going to go. We do a site evaluation on the soil itself, determine the depth, what type of systems. We generally try to give you 3 options to go with. There could be more options. We just generally give you 3. That doesn't mean that you can't use another option. We can go back and look and see if it's possible. But we generally give you 3 options, and you kind of go from there. Okay. But once we leave that, the system's installed, we're done. We don't know what goes on. We don't know what stuff with. High traffic. All right, we're going to do a detached garage. We're going to put in a pool. We're going to do this. And it's like what? Asking for forgiveness instead of permission, right? So we just try to do our due diligence and say, hey, if you come in, or if you have somebody that's asking you about that, send them into the health department. About how far do y'all solve?
We have them back to about 89.
89. Okay. Now, those 89 files drawings hopefully. But if you don't have a drawing, we can come out there without, like I said, I'm not getting it down. And we'll get into something that's called listing system. But they have a file there, have a drawing, to kind of give you an idea where it's at. Okay, if we put a pool here, maybe you have to cut off a line and add on a new line. Or maybe if you install it over here, or maybe if you just move it to the other side, you might not have an issue. So that is something important to pull. You have access to that, you can come in there, and they can give you a copy of it. Fine. So back onto that stuff. We typically try to look and see what's going on in the house and why the system's failing, okay? We talked about the number of bedrooms. If you come in and you fill out an application, Bob's got one, you're gonna go into the local health department 8 to 9:30 in the morning.
Ask how far away.
10 foot. 10 foot. In-ground pools, 20. 10 foot. with a above. Any type of structure that's above ground with a foundation. I've never had it happen. Some of the old heads that I've worked with, if you put a line too close to a walkway in front of the home, which is crazy because we use concrete components, if that effluent can draw towards that concrete and get into that concrete, it can smell out. But it has to be cool.
Hey Jay,
Yes.
on our application for the site, we added, one of the questions, is there gonna be a pool installed? That way I can keep that in mind when I'm doing my site evaluations to, because typically the pool's gonna go kind of right in behind the house. So we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, so that's something you want to know, yeah.
You please repeat the question that she asked, because I didn't. She asked. how-
Typically, like with when a pool's installed or a hot tub or something like that, how far do you want that to go? It's just, you want to be about 10 foot if it's above ground, in ground. So, kind of jumping around. I'll come back and cover this once I talk about it. We'll talk about when you come in and fill out an application, what we're kind of looking for, maybe to help you get a head start on that deal, okay? So, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Go, you just.
So we're talking about the distribution system, talking about these boxes.
These boxes, correct.
Yeah, so when a system fails, not maybe, other people in this room know this answer before I do, I don't know the answer, obviously, but when they go in and repair it, do they often go in and repair the boxes, replace the boxes?
It depends.
Replace the check.
Yeah, if there's any structural damage, is it taking on groundwater? Is it turned? Is it been messed up? A lot of times they'll start to, especially if it's a newer system. Now, if it's 30, 40 years old, might just blow that up. Like, all right, it's possible that the existing tank can be used. We'll let the installer look at it. We might pump it out. The baffles that need sanitary tees installed inside. If it structurally looks okay, then we'll allow them to use that. And then let's add a distribution box, one, or if they need a couple, depending on what the installers do, and some new lateral lines if it's old. If it's new, then they might start by diagnosing and saying, okay, is there any issues with the tanks and take on groundwater? No, everything's okay there. Let's move on to the box. Because you don't want to just start unearthing things, because now you're going to cause loose points in the system. So, yeah, you can look at, sometimes it could be as simple as if that was fractured, it was taking on groundwater, something's going on, you can replace that box. I don't know if you have a permit there where you do have to replace it. Do they have to come in and get a permit, or do they just generally have a license installer do it?
Usually if it's like for like, just a box, we'll just have them go on with it. If they need it for some type of vendor or something, then we get a permit and stuff.
Yeah. That way it's that documentation with it.
There's standard footage out for the boxes.
No. It's not. I mean,
A lot of them are buried.
you want them to be close. You want them to be somewhat like not way out, but there's not a set distance now. If this system was way downhill, that effluent's going to be traveling pretty fast, right? It's going to have a lot of head on it. So typically, what do? If this ground was like this, I might just install a box right here before it hits my box down here. Why? Slow that effluent down. That way, it's not full speed ahead. Because with that hitting through, eventually that might wear that, especially here, that might wear that deteriorate right down the box. So yeah, if you were to get inside one and that's gone, that's an issue, because now if it has any pressure coming to it, it might just bypass all these lines to get this last one straight out. But yeah, there's no set distance on it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about.
They are. With road. And somebody's kind of installing with the back of it, or a skid or a, not well with an excavator. But I tell you, when somebody goes to dig something up, I really prefer it be a certified seller. Is why, you know, if you got any experience on any equipment, you don't just want Joe Blow jumping on it and start with it. If they get into something, it's not gonna be what's they're back over. You typically, you don't want to get on that stuff with heavy machine. If you have to, hindsight is, if you can put an excavator or something that's on tracks, skid steer on tracks, because it disperses that way. Okay? That way, if you do have to dig in there, you kind of dig that up. Or, you know, sometimes if they're not that low, they have handles on those boxes. You can just shovel that out and take your lid off there and inside see what's going on. So we talked from the house to the tank, out of the tank, what can cause upgrades, what type of upgrades there are, out to your distribution box, okay? Type of distribution boxes, like I said, you have even flow, which is the heavy clay, which is on here in Grant County. You have a hillside box, which is basically what it feeds in 1 or 2 lines. Once those lines fill up, spills back in that box, raises up, spills down to the next line, okay? And then you have one last box, and it's kind of just like, it looks like even flow. It's just this right here. It's a level box. There's things that I can like, but I can't tell you no. I want to tell you no one of those stuff because a lot of those says I have to. They're legal in the state of Kentucky. But really, on these types of pockets, you want the contour on that ground. Why? Because we want a bath inside that box to slow down. Right? That doesn't have it. So you can have these sheet out, like I just said, that I think can go right in there, skip some of those and go right into the last. So you really want sloping the box with no slope if you're going to use a level box. That's kind of you're over 1%. Right? So we get out here. This is all solid pipe, okay? It's non-perforated pipe. So you go into your system. I'm assuming that everybody's familiar with your old rock trench lateral. That's what it used to be pretty much. There was other options. They kind of went away with like the Buffalo. Exist anymore. Try them out. So get back, okay? So your traditional is rock. And then if anybody's seen these, this is kind of the older one. Anybody's seen these plastic, the half pieces they call them like turtle shells, whatever. This is what we call a leaching chamber. Okay, this is what sets in the ground. It's a plastic piece. People are like, no way. Put that in the ground, it's going to survive. Yes. Now, what's the heaviest thing you want to take over? Probably 0. But with me saying that, that doesn't mean if you have rock lateral lines that you just take whatever you want. You really don't want to put things like the machine. Septic system. So now I'll explain the difference on those. And then we'll talk about one of the options that's used in this one, maybe a little bit more frequently.
Real quick,
Yeah.
about 95% of our systems from 1990 on are leaching chamber systems.
Okay. So and why is that? I'll kind of jump back to this. Why is that? Well, maybe it's more cost efficient. You do have one of the suppliers from the East Coast, probably the majority of the United States, out of Winchester. That's if you've ever seen it. Have you ever heard of Infiltrator? Never heard of Infiltrator? No? Okay. They supply these right here. All this is recyclable material. They are #1 in the world for recycling. Yeah. Okay. Right down here in the markets. They supply these all over. They also make plastic septic tanks. So what do? Sometimes when I go in there, when if I have to approve a component, they'll have bags full of new shredded material. All that plastic material type stuff. It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat. And it's just so happens to be down 75, wow, 64. Okay. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about rock. Okay. When you have a rock lateral like this, okay. So from bottom to top, you have to bring it till it has to be 24 inches. So in that rock line, you have that solid pipe go into it, stops about 2 foot into it. Next into this right here, 4 minute pipe. These holes are. This is what's set in the middle of the rock. This for us is the piece where we want to space up. Okay? Holes are on the bottom, white strip, green strip, orange strip, whatever space up. We look at this. Install this. These can only be bought in 10-foot section and put in your line. So you'll have rock. You gotta have 12 inches of grass always inside of the rock trench. Okay? And then from that point on, you gotta at least have 12 inches of soil. So if I say, if me and Bob were looking at a site and said, install this rock that's 16 inches deep, they're gonna dig out 16 inches, okay? They're gonna put 12 inches of rock with this pipe in the middle of it, and then they're gonna bring in 8 inches of soil, or they can use what's there to get to that 24-inch mark, okay? They also allow for settling, right? So what's that mean? So when you have lateral lines out there, you put fill soil over it, you don't pump them up like they're waves in your wall. You go across it and then taper out. So the best way for me to describe that to you, just like I described that to new inspectors, is I think of it as a baseball. Okay? So your mound is your system, right? Towards home plate is down slope. And then off the side and second base is up slope and off sides. So when they do this, they have to take that fill soil. So let's say they have to have 8 inches there. They went in 16 inches deep with rock, okay? 12 inches of rock, brought in 8 inches of cover, allowed to settle. So they're going to bring in more. That's up to them to determine how much. And then they're going to extend that around the lateral line 2 foot, and they're going to taper it off whichever way it goes. So it's never just a square. Because why? With effluent, not only does it travel down, but when it's a hydraulic heavy load, it builds up into that rock and sets it, right? And it also spreads out laterally. So these things either have to be a minimum of 6 foot or 8 foot from side to side. It should not be stacked well. So you want that distance in between. So when you put your rock laterally in, you'll put 6 inches of rock. They'll have a tool, they'll build it themselves. The 2x4 will stay off the ground, and they'll run that in there. They'll slide a 10-inch section of pipe on there, and they'll bring the backhoe over. They'll dump that rock in there. They'll be able to put it over. They'll put 4 inches around it, and this will be 2 inches of ground. Okay. So it doesn't settle in the bottom. Right? You want that effluent to get in that rock, and that rock is clean. So what happens? Good bacteria sets in those crevices of that rock, and then holds onto it, and then allows it to absorb down into your soil. If your soil is put on top of that rock and it gets into that, then it basically just can destroy the cells. Why? Because you haven't allowed that effluent in that area to be killed. So, and I'll get to that part when you put the soil back over the line after you install it. But this is what's inside of it, okay? 10-foot sections, this is generally what you see. You can have pipes that look like this, but it'll be solid, but it'll have holes on the bottom. It's like this, pretty the same. So just, all right. Once you get your rock in there, you're going to cover it back over. We have to put a layer of either straw or fabric over top of that to give that a barrier between the rock and that. Because we talked about, you don't want dirt filling down the crevice. You want that effluent to be able to set in there, okay? The reason that, I'll come back to this, the reason that we clean that effluent up is because when it gets out here to this line, you can build up, probably haven't seen that either. Trying to talk to you like you've seen it before. If you ever dig into an old ladder, it will be a black layer of scum layer that's built up. That's what we call black pile. When it gets into your line, and when it seals it off, no repair. It's game over. So that's built up into your line, okay? So we try to clean that up. The more you clean that effluent up here, you get out to here, the longer the lines are going to last. I can't tell you how long. Average, I don't know, 25, 30 years. I've seen some of them last for 40 or 50, but when they install be installed, that won't last a year. But they lasted 50 years. You know? I don't know. And then there's some systems I'm like, yeah, that was wasn't a bad site. You know, everything got installed good, had it installed, put it in great. Failed a couple of years later. Sometimes we just don't know why. We can try to diagnose all we want. You're asking us, Bob, mainly at the local level, to go out there and cite something, what, 30, 45 minutes? It's been there for thousands of years. You're going to make a determination. based off of this training. And our training isn't just set in the classroom for a couple of days. We go through extensive training. We go to UK for a full week and do SOULS training. And we actually have to pass out a class which is a full semester. We do it in a week. And it's with all inspectors. Now we don't get way off into it, but the majority of the matter of that class, we take it in a week. And then we go through training with all this. And then we come back and we do a field training. And then a whole year we're in the program. They're out working and we're coming in every quarter to check the paper. And then we can full circle. So from start to end, this program for the last 18 to 24 months before you get going. It might take you 3 years, it might take you 5 years before you go back. But that's the rigorous stuff that we go through to make the determination. So when I say a system can fail, sometimes they did mess up. You know, I'm a mediator. I come out, the system's failing, and I go out there and I go, hey, the system's been installed to me. I see this what we call a restricted horizon. You've either gotten too close to it or you. Now, I have all the faith in the world about it. Right? But that being said, if all messed up, I'll take it all aside, and I won't do it in front of somebody else, but we'll talk about it. I'll be like, okay. But I'm a mediator, so I'm not only here for the health department, but I'm here for the okay? Or whoever it might be. I've only been here for 3 years, but I've not heard anything but good stuff. Like I said, there's 2 other inspectors. So that being said, that's a rock system, okay? Not always easy. You got to talk about buying pipe. You got to talk about getting rock. When I say economic, well, if there's no rock quarries here, you have to go for a couple of counties over to get it. That's more of a cost, right? These guys right here don't require it. Now, it might be a little bit more expensive, but this can also be a one-man job too, because why? This is cut in half, all right? This is for what we use for training purposes, so our new inspectors can see what this stuff looks like, but this is generally about 4 to 5 foot long, and they snap together, and they probably can go maybe about 20 and kind of bend them, all right? That's a snap on. When you are up on a machine and you're trying to fill that rock in it, it's not easy to make that rock, especially with it. So it's to be a 2-man job. This right here can be one. Why? Because there's no barrier material that go over it, and there's no rock that goes with it. And you're saying, well, how's that work? Your solid pipe. I don't have the end caps because there's an end cap that ties on this. Your solid pipe goes into right here, and then that fluid just travels down through this thing with nothing inside it. There's no pipe. Okay, comes out through here. That's screening through there. That's the way they designed it. Take on that foot. There doesn't have to be anything. Okay. Dirt right next to that. Okay. So we talked about rock being 24 inches deep. You see that? Your next option, which is general, is what we call they're called leaching chambers. Okay, you hear people call them turtle shells, whatever. Okay, plastic dome pieces. These go on the ground. Now we talked about being 24 inches, right? 12 inches of rock, 12 inches of dirt, get you 24. Okay, that's if they have to bring it in and kind of mount it up a little bit, right, and taper it out. These are 18. So this guy right here, 12 inches tall. So then you do 6 inches of cover on top. Right? That gets you 18 inches top to bottom. There is no rock, there is no barrier material. There goes right out. So we just said it. What's the shallowest the system can go in the state of Kentucky? 6 inches. Well, how you fit 6 inches, or how you fit 12 inches of rock in 6 inches? So that's where that got from. Because you can go 6 inches in, set that in there, we do 12 inches of dirt. Or, well, more than that for settling, raise it up and then taper it out at the top of it, okay? Like I said, about the heaviest thing that you're going to go over with those is it's probably a 0 turn, okay? Like I said, you really don't want to take anything else over your gravel either, all right? There are other options, but those are typically your most common. I'll kind of I have a ton of slides, but some of them aren't going to make sense to you, and you're not going to be going through training to be an on-site person. So I'm not going to go through all of them. Okay. Okay. So here's what happens. That effluent builds up in that rock. We know that it absorbs down, it absorbs out, and then when it's a heavy load, it sets up into that rock until it absorbs through. Okay. So like I said, heavy clay soils, it takes a while. It absorbs through here, purification goes into the water table. We have what's called a restrictive horizon. Okay. What is a restrictive horizon? A technical term, it's a semi-permeable layer. What does that mean? Does it treat the effluent properly before it hits the water table? It absorbs it. It's not impermeable, it's semi-permeable. So it slows it down. All right. So when you hear them say, hey, how deep was your restriction? Well, my restriction was 24 inches. Okay. Well, in the state of Kentucky, you have to know at least stay off that 12 inches. Right. So I'll have to upgrade my tank, and I can go 12 inches into the ground because that's what's left. Actually, if you ask people around the United States, this right here is why? There's some people that do 3 or 4 foot off. We do 12 inches, and they're like, holy smokes. What we said. Not bragging or anything like that. I'm just saying. You ain't first, you last. Right? Those are first. Alaska, you're like, well, what do they do for? They have to be like 6 feet. So it's crazy. Same with Florida. They have a pretty good big one too because you have sand. There's no filtration to it. It's like a rock layer. When effluent gets on a rock, it just travels down that rock. If you have fractures, it hits that fracture and goes right through it. So when you have rock or you have a restricted horizon, you have to say at least 12, a maximum of 18. Now, can you go a little bit higher on that? You can, but if you stay 18 or higher, then you don't have to upgrade your pre-treatment. Okay. But in this instance, you have a high group 4 or a high clay content soil here. Okay. Once it gets through there, it gets into your water table. We showed you it was well here. It comes back through here, gets into your well water, comes back through there. Right. So it is important. There's no longer the days of, well, I put systems in for 20 years and I've never had it. If you stuck it in real quick, you got it. Not going to surface. It's either A, going to back up in the house, or B, not going to tree and go into the water table as well. Okay. So we talked about this. 12 to 18-inch separation, water table, restrictive horizon, bedrock. Okay. Okay, there's your typical septic tank right there. Okay, that's a 2-piece tank. All right, what do I mean by 2-piece tank? It comes in 2 pieces. This right here is where it splits. They use something called a butyl mastic rubber BMR. It looks like a big fruit roll. It's black. They put it in between those tanks. When they put it on, it smashes out, folds out on both sides. Seals it properly. Okay, so you have a inlet and an outlet. All right. The inlet comes into the tank, should be a baffle or sanitary tee. You should have 8 to 10 inches of penetration into that effluent when it comes in. When it goes out of that tank on the outlet end, it's 35 to 40% penetration depth on that tank. Length times width times penetration depth is how we determine the depth of this. We determine it. It's not done by somebody at the local level or by an installer that's got something cut it up. That goes on their approval letter, so they know if it's supposed to be cut at the manufacturer, or if it's poured into the tank, if it's a concrete baffle and it's poured in, it's designed there to how deep it needs to be when they make that tank. Okay? So if you ever see that, if they take that off and put a filter on, it doesn't matter how deep it is, because this is what's clean. Okay. So that's typical your septic tank right there. You got inlet and outlet. All right. So we just talked about that. You have vent space, which is right above your lid. You have air space, and then you have what we call our scum layer, which is everything floats. We call this our cleared zone, and call it our sludge layer. Okay? When that sludge layer starts to build up and take over a clear zone, that's what we talk about. You get the lines and build that black foul mat. which will seal the pores in the soil. Coming back. If you destroy that soil and you start smearing things, you work it while it's wet, do anything like that, you compact it, you have destroyed the pores in the soil. And there's no revitalizing. It's done. Okay. Yes.
Jacob, I have a question. If you have a system that completely failed, saying you need a new system, can you tear that one out and install a new system?
Not because the soil will be, you'll now caused a weak point in the soil. So you either have to try to install it somewhere else, or you can do what we call maybe a filling, to where they might have to go on septic tanks or holding tanks, which is the same thing as a septic tank, except for they're gonna have to be a little bit bigger, maybe bring another tank behind it, hold it, and then let that area set if the soil is structurally capable of doing that. But if there's been a system there, more likely you're not gonna be able to put something back there because the pores in that soil are destroyed over time. Yeah. So it just depends. Like I said, if you have an ODO system, on brand new things, we really stick to the code. We're kind of gridlocked on. We're not really wanting to give anything. On repairs, when you get into those, we don't break rules, but we start to bend things. We start to make things happen that we normally wouldn't. Try to give a little bit here, give a little bit there, because why? We're just trying to do anything to make it. We now have stipulations to where, like, lot sizes, you don't have a lot size. Do you? So a lot of times counties that are set forth by the board, they typically want to try to make lot sizes. Why? Because when we go out, you want system area plus repair ability. Okay. Or its equivalent, whatever that might be. So, you just don't want every lot being sold as possible and having postage stamp, size lots. It's hard to make things work. I equate those to like lake lots. Now, you don't have a lot of lakes up here. More towards like my area, Breckenridge and Grayson County, because I'm from Elizabethtown. I have Rough River and No Limit. Right? When you have a lake lot, it's kind of weird because they'll sell 5 acres. Rigs floating. It's going to have bigger needs. And they only have this much. And then you deal with the Corps of Engineers. They set lines. You have the red line, the yellow line. If they branch you, they'll give you 5 foot of elevation. Oh, what do people want to do? I want to build a summer home. I've only got about from here to that wall. I'm probably going to build it.
We do have lakes in Grant County, Williamstown Lake, in particular, with a lot of older homes, older systems. And back to what you said about just trying to make something work, that's kind of what we got to do now.
Typically, yeah, you have to try to make things work that will suffice, but get rid of the public health hazards. All right. Yes.
I don't know if it's maybe a question or comment, but one thing you mentioned, I guess the sludge rises and it gets to the outlet and it goes into the line itself. That creates a problem.
Correct.
Creates a soil problem.
Yes.
And ultimately causes the system to fail. One thing I think is not maybe stressed enough in the market and the area as a whole is just the consistency of pump and tank.
Correct. Yeah. Most people don't know. It's very, think anything of it. Think broke, don't fix it. It requires maintenance. And everybody thinks when you have maintenance, there's going to be all kinds of stuff to it. It's really not. I don't know what the going rate is. I know kind of where I'm from. I'm going to say maybe $250 to $450 a pump a tank out. These guys either have 4 to 5. Okay. So, these guys got places where they can land spread this stuff. It's been approved by the health department, or they just take it to municipal and they take that on. Now, municipal would never maintain if guys are pumping tanks every single day, because that's not how municipal set up. The high strength waste that we bring compared to what's coming through there, it would not suffice below the load. Just couldn't maintain. So, because what we house is super strong versus the amount of stuff that's coming through municipal, it's like water, whereas what's coming through this. But that's where they can take it. Yes.
This is like a question.
Yeah.
Is there a thing such as a year per person, or 2 years per person? I know there's a bedroom you don't know how many people in the bedroom. So, you know, we the bedroom full of 4 kids. You're adding on to the pump out question. So how do we know when it's time to pump out?
I think it's probably.
General,
the
yeah.
trouble. It's a problem.
Yeah, if you have trouble, but general rule of thumb is every 5 to 7 years. Now, I know that I say that, but you know, if you fill out the 2-bedroom, and you decide you put 8 people in that house, that's all you. And it's probably not gonna last us. Right. Okay, it might take a lot longer. I'm just saying, general rule of thumb is 5 to 7. I don't know, you might have to pump that thing out for 15 years to get one person. It just depends. You know, it depends on what's going on inside the home. We have no control, okay? We only size pump or systems based off of that size, based off of people, okay? We can always recommend, we cannot require. So if you, for instance, if I have, I'll bring this up, I have people that will do foster, okay? So your mom and dad do foster like 8 or 10 kids, you got a 3-bedroom home, it's probably not gonna fly, right? So that's kind of usually set up for 3 to 5 people, maybe, depending on the water usage. If you have that many kids, you might want to say, hey, it's up to you, I can't require you to do it. Fails out, fails out, and you have to repair it. But you might want to add in additional to it to upgrade for what you have going on because your water usage is going to be so high. But there's no deal where, well, we'll just wait until the system has issues to pump it out. Really just general rule of thumb, is just pump it out in 5 to 7 years. You might have to do a little bit more frequently, the more pressure you put on there, or if you just have, you know, an older man or lady in the house, just don't put that much pressure on here. Might not have to do it every 10 years.
Yeah,
It just depends.
What we recommend about every 5 years, depending on the size of your family. You got 4 kids, you know, a married couple, 4 kids, they might want to go like every 3 years versus if it's just kids have all moved out now, it's just the parents living there, they can probably get by every 10. You know,
So if you pop the lid, the way that system is done, the way the teams are, will the tank always look full?
Yeah, so if you think about it,
Determine pop the lid, that you see it's full, that it needs to be pumped.
doesn't
Is that true? See what I'm saying?
yeah, so here's the thing, if you take the lid off there and the tank's full, you're supposed to pump it out?
Right.
No. No, because
That's just the way it's all designed.
correct, it's really the reason you want to pump this out is as this sludge layer begins to grow, it's taken away from this zone, which goes out to the laterals. So there's no sense, you won't be able to see it. I mean, yeah, when home inspectors come out, they do what's called sifting inspection. They might open that tank out or open that tank up. They got some type of tool that they'll put in there and they'll pull it out. And it'll look like soil. And then show you how deep it is. They might say, yeah. Right. Or if there's not that much, depending on who's there, they might say, well, you probably get
So the
out.
whole tank doesn't mean it's
Doesn't mean
yeah, we get that question all the time. But I took the lid off and my septic tank's pumped full. It's supposed to be full.
right. Yeah, that's the way it's
So
designed.
you got so many gallons in the tank, you use 5 gallons in the home, 5 gallons that was already in the tank go out.
What is the maximum?
Just depends on, when we set this right here, when it starts to get close to the bottom of that, or starts to take away from that clear zone. All I can say is, that we're not just beating around the bush and not wanting to answer you. That's just the way it's designed. We just say general rule of thumb is 5 to 7 years, regardless of whether you have a ton of people in the house or you don't have it. That's generally what we say. But yes, the more this clear zone starts to go away, the more it can get out into your labs. I will say this before I answer you. So if somebody says I got 1,000 gallon tank, so I pumped it, probably won't fill up for another 6 months, right? Well, no. Because if you look at your water bill, you use 3,000 gallons, tank's 1,000 gallons, 2,000 gallons. So even if you take that off, it's always gonna be, it might take a week, 10 days to fill that tank up. It take much. But the thing is that now that good bacteria is supercharged. And now it's doing that. Okay, so it's eating some of that.
Only for our red X. That is.
No, no rid of it.
The red X.
No rid of it. That's the ag. Can't turn that down. All that is. We allow things in the state to come into the patterns. We don't stand behind it. We don't support it. Okay, red septic. So you can pour it down there. Here's what will probably happen, right? You pour Red X in there, what's it gonna do? Probably work on this sludge area, right? Kind of eat it up. Well, you got this clear zone, right? Well, what happens? We want this to settle and stay in the tank. When that builds up, it gets in your clear zone, guess where it goes? Add it to your laterals. And we just talked about that black pile there. That will destroy your system. It's not. gonna
Also,
do
it's
anything.
eating the sludge.
Sorry.
What now? It's eating the sludge.
So we can get up, yes, so we can break it up and get it to clear zone, get out into your lateral. So if you're asking me personally, a lot of times I'll answer your questions personally. 100% I'm not wasting at all. Let me answer her. And I'll get to you. What you had? Yeah. So
there
no,
is no maintenance to the tank, per se.
besides pumping it out, and if you have a filter in there, hosing that off and sliding it back in. It's minimal. Just depends on what's going on inside the house. Maybe it's every couple months, maybe it's every 6 months. If you don't do it, you'll eventually find it back in your house. And I think I might have told you this earlier. The lowest point of plumbing in the home is in your tub, unless you have a basement. First place to go back up is in your tub. Right? If you don't have it. Yes.
We had a come down and we give it golden stars because I use that, monthly. And he said, what a wonderful job we did. And
Based off what information?
That it was all clear. Clean,
Are you the only two that live in the house?
yes,
Okay. Yeah. Don't use it.
save some money.
Yes. I don't know how much it costs. Sure.
750. 40.
7 to 15 for what, a month?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, what is that? $200? Go out to eat in a nice place and you say, oh, hey, make him buy you something nice. I'm just saying, it's not going to help you. It's an additive, I don't stand behind it. Now, maybe it does break down and stuff, but I can tell you this, that if it does, it's getting up to the zone we don't want it to be in, it gets out into your laterals, okay? If it's only you two in the house, you're not gonna put near as much pressure on that tank. Coupled with a bunch of kids in the house, because that's a lot more pressure, a lot more.
You're not getting water from the plumbing to the tank, a lot of times maybe that sludge just sit there.
You're talking like if you're having trouble with the plumbing to the tank? I don't know, if you clog up, I guess, they can have a clog in there. That you're gonna have to call a plumber on that. We don't have anything to do with that, yeah. Yeah. So it's hard to see this because this is in yellow. Let's say 3 or less 1,000 gallons. There's your garbage disposal, 1,250, okay? 4-bedroom, 1,250, garbage disposal makes it 1,500, and then so on, okay? 250 gallons additional for garbage disposal, 250 gallons additional for each extra bedroom. That's how we decide. Okay? You ask us, we're not going to walk in that house and look and say, not to 4, not 3. Whatever you put on that site evaluation. If you sell this 4, they install it 3, it's on the facility. You're out. Okay? We're going to go with what was thrown in statement, and that's how we're going to size the system. Okay? I'm not saying that's what you're going to do. Has it happened? Absolutely. Repeat a little bit. We're going to do this. We're going to put on additional data. Okay. It's your risk. You take it. But whatever you put on this documentation is what's important because that's how we base our TDW. That's how we solve our system. Okay? TDW is total daily waste. All right. So each bedroom is 110 gallons. Okay. I'm going to hit a few more things here, and then we're going to talk about some of the stuff that Bob's got. Okay. There's what I can't pick up for a minute. This is an equal flow box. Okay. If you want to talk about, here's your concrete bathroom. You're setting out those here, then gets here, goes under, it comes out, disperses even. Right. Probably generally you can move scan. Okay. So this can be your septic system right here. This is an equal flow box. Shows all the lines are 100. It's not going to look like that. All right. We're kind of saying that's a little on contour, but you're looking at it as it's going down. It's obviously not going to look like that. It's gravity, right? It'll come down, puke out the end, and we'll do it. Right? So if you're looking at that, it's kind of installed on contour. You can't really tell it from that picture, okay?
Like how you had the car.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't do this presentation, it was passed out. Yeah, I don't know, like, if that was a benefit at all. I don't know. I don't know.
Just make sure.
Yes, yeah, if, a bedroom is determined basically, and we don't determine that, but the way I think planning and zoning and building inspectors, you know, we pull a building permit, whatever it might be. A closet, and I believe like an egress window is what determines a bedroom. So if you're unsure, or if you have those people go, I'm gonna build a 3-bedroom with an office space. Go ahead and tell me, can it be designed as a bedroom? Well, no, there's not a window, there's not a closet. Okay, 3-bedroom. We try to give you settle hints like that to say, okay, yeah, I think it can be turned that, or we have a loft, but it's just for with toys, we have some windows, we do nothing like that. Okay. But if you have a extra bedroom that you feel like can be turned into a bedroom and it actually be counted as a bedroom, then you might want to note that I'm going to go ahead and size it for a 4-bedroom system, okay? Even though we might only be using 3 in the 4th and I use their office. That's what's in up to you. We're going to size that system based off what it, okay? So this effluent comes out, travels out. The bottom of this box, where that line comes out, is level with the top of the buried material. When you're talking about boxes, if you set it too low, what happens? Maybe you can't use that whole line and it trickles back down into the box, right? So the whole line doesn't. Or if you set this box too high, that fluid gets down, then what? Can't get back into the box. So then what happens? It fell down on top of the ladder because it can't relax to go back into that box, okay? So this is what we're talking about. Here's a box full of water. They filled it up. You got a line here, one here, here, and here. Put those speed levelers on there, pour that water in there, you watch it take in equally, okay? Here are those hillside boxes. You got a box that comes in, that's coming in from the high side, where the one line's higher. Those 2 lines go out equally. Once it fills that box up, it spills into this and comes back down. So it hits that box, once those 2 lines fill up, raises up in there, spills down to this box, okay? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so here's a plastic box that I just showed you, this hillside box. If you see these in the ground, if the box is too high, like I said, see your line coming across there? It's gonna pond up here because it won't make it back in the box, right? We want the bottom of this line being level with the top of that barrier material right there that goes up to the new box, okay? Okay. So it supports 600 pounds, these guys right here, per square foot, okay, on the top of them. There they are on the ground. You can kind of see there's no rock. What would they do? They shoot that and cover that right over there, okay? There is no rock, there is no barrier material. And you can kind of see those bend. That's more accurate. Okay? Not, well, I thought everything was just there. It's not. You see how that bows with the contour material, okay? There's a bed. We put a bunch of them together. That is legal. And it can reduce the sizing of the bed if you have those, okay? But here's the thing you have to think about. That might be a repair. They might have limited space, right? So they put a big bed together like that, put it all in one area. But what you have to think about is that's a lot of effluent for a small area. It's kind of like a pool almost. So just because we have options doesn't mean they're great options, but that might be all that they can use in that instance right there, okay? There's some where it's been kind of covered over a little bit. Those are 3 rows of chambers, so that'd be 9 foot. Okay? These guys come in 3 foot wide, 2 foot wide, and 1 foot wide. Okay, they don't go any wider than that. So if you wanted to do a 6 foot chamber bed, take this guy and another 3 foot and set them beside each other. Right? That'd be a 6 foot wide bed. Right? Or you could take 3 2-footers, 2, 2, and 2, make a bed out of it. Okay, these are your most common. I've never seen until I got here and used to see them up in the office. I've never seen a 1 foot or 2 foot. I've seen 2, not and or 1. Okay, that's 23 years. like I said, right down the road. So they don't come out very often.
Guess they use those for space, so critical.
Or it's like
Slope.
sloping. It's sloping heavy, so you gotta think how sideways the slope's at. So if you go in 12 inches on the high, depending on how big your slope is, you might only have dug 12 inches, but you're only 7 inches in the ground on the roadside, but you lost 5 inches over that. So the narrower you are, the less you lose, the wider you are. And you don't want to go below that 6-inch mark. Below that's experimental. But you kind of take it to the solid. Because it's experimental, it's not approved. Okay. There's a ton of stuff. We could do this Monday through Friday. So real quick, maximum length of lines, same with these and rock, as long as the line could ever be 200 foot. Won't ever be any longer than that, okay? I can't speak for anything in the 90s and 80s and stuff like that. Whatever they might have, okay? Space, pretty much 6 foot to 8 foot from sidewall to sidewall. Maximum depth, like we said, deepest still be is 24 inches. Now, if you have an older home, might be 4 foot deep for all we know. But as far as regulations from the 90s until now, 24 inches deep, okay? And then the minimum, six inches in the ground, level and uniform depth, minimum of 10 inches of settled cover soil, or a little bit more than that, depending on how much they can bring in, okay? So this is kind of fudged a little bit. It's not really a 200 line. Just kind of put that on there and threw 200 on there. It's probably okay. So 200 long. This is a 2 foot wide trench, and then 8 foot from center to center, or 8 foot sidewall to side. Okay. 8 foot center to center is the length or the width of the line is 2 foot or less. Okay. Sidewall to sidewall is 3 foot or bigger. So this guy right here on the side of the trench has to be at least 8 foot from the next line, the closest point. Okay. So they might have to start out wider because of the contour. It's not always like you said on paper. It's all good to draw and say everything's 8 foot, but you might start off 15 foot. And by the time you do contour, which if you look at this picture, you look at this ladder line, you got one that curves here, you got one that goes here. And then you got one that runs here, and you got one that kind of here and zags back. Because that's the way the contour, that's the way they laid it out. So it falls back. Right? So you can tell right here at the end of this thing, it might be 30, 40 foot apart. But at the closest point right here, it might be. So that's how we determine it. Okay. So that's kind of what it looks like there. Talked about rock, 4-inch pipe, 6, 4, and 2, that's 12. If you bury material, you got soil over top of it, okay? Over time, what happens to that soil? Settles out. Right? Why you don't have mounds in the yard. Yes. Okay. So there's your rock bed. It's laid out. It's got straw on it. It's going to be coming back over. Right. We're going to get into some stuff. So we're right here. Okay. So I'm not going to get into all that. We're not going to talk a whole lot about the soil. Okay? I'm going to get into existing system because you all probably do with that a lot. Okay. It's great for us. Why? Because there's nothing in the regulation. But the health department said they set their own standards. Here in northern Kentucky might be different than North Central District, which is 7 County Trimble, or Westco, which is like Harrison, Scott, and Nicholas. So it might be a little bit different, okay? So the existing system, a lot of time what will happen is you'll fill out some paperwork, they'll pay whatever fee they have. Their board sets that fee, okay? So it varies wherever it's at. One place might be 100 up here, might be
It's $200.
200 up here. Okay? So they'll come out, they'll use a probe, hopefully they have a file with the drawing, paperwork, anything of that nature. And what they'll do is they'll come up here and they'll do inspections, try to find the tank, and try to find the labs, make sure nothing's failing, okay? If they don't find anything, they'll still note at the time of the inspection, no signs of failure. Plain Jane, right? But if they can't find anything, usually suggest that they get it installed. It's against one a tractor, knows what they're doing, come in and unearth the tank. So they can at least pop those lids off and know the tank is. Get in there, look at it, make sure it's all right, it's not structural damage on the decking tail, and roll on from there. Some districts or even independent counties already have a set standard. Doesn't matter if they can walk around and find it, they want the tank unearthed right off the bat. So some places call it. I don't know what all you all require anything like that here.
Nothing really, it's mode and everything. We really don't like to build what we do, but, because a lot of times we do these existing systems inspections, the home is in. I want to live there in 6 months.
Right.
So we go out there and find the tank, find the leach field, no signs of problem. Someone moves in, got a larger family than the last people that lived there. It's families. Wasn't doing anything on inspection. Our inspections are today up. There's no guarantee that anything there's.
Doesn't mean you go out there, they do the existing system, somebody moves in there and he's right. Most of the time they'll note it on there, hey, home was not occupied at the time of inspection. If the water's turned off, people have leisure, it's not gonna affect. Even if it was filled, it's gonna dry up because there's no pressure, okay? So, that's not a guarantee that, hey, we come in there, the system's gonna last 5 months, 5 years, 50 years. We don't know. It just depends on how you put pressure on it. And it's different, what's going on in the house versus maybe what's going on in the pool. So it's a real gray area. If they do notice any malfunctions, they will improve it. So for instance, if I go out there, you have a riser to grade, those things can be easy to break. A lot of times if the home is set, they hire a company to mow it, guy with the mower, zero turn hits it, breaks it off there, I'm not approving because that's required to be a part of the tank. They'll have to replace that part. Once it's replaced, I'll view it. Okay, riser's been fixed, system's approved. So we don't get to the point either where we're like, hey, we're gonna make some stipulations, tank pumped out, and put on there. Tank. So you can pick it back and forth. You gotta do this, you should do this. That's why I said you have to do that. One time we require something, it's enough. Now, if the malfunction's bad enough, they might say, you're gonna have to come and fill out for a site evaluation because it's falling out of lateral. This is gonna have to be corrected. Okay? Somebody has to come out there to be installed or somebody with background. They're gonna have to cite it because they might have to. Doesn't mean they'll have to replace the tank with the whole thing. But sometimes it does come down to the whole system.
And I mean, you're talking about a total new system replacement, new septic tank, new
For 3 bedroom. General it's 3 bedroom.
and it's just to say that it's fairly decent, no bells and whistles required, the soil's pretty decent, no extra soil charges. You're looking about $10,000 to $12,000 for 3 bedroom.
In this area of play.
Yeah, because when you,
Depending, on what the soil actually is, yes.
if you have clay, which is a higher clay content, you have to add more footage. I mean, there's more of an upgrade on your pre-treat there. We will talk about a system real quick, yes.
Paul, they couldn't get the site evaluation done and
Well, once they do a site evaluation, they issue some options, installers can come in and go. And here's the deal with installing, okay? They're required, in this state, we require our installers to go through a lot. So they have to be trained each year, they have to maintain CQ. They have to have liability insurance, and they have to be up to date on all stuff. We're actually implementing a new program where if they install more advanced systems, they may have the capability of skipping CEUs, but they're more advanced in the training. So we've offered more levels coming up to put them into advanced and then master level. Okay? But we require our scholars to do a whole lot versus states don't really require. And they have continuous education. The education that they get can be online. We approved for from PowerPoint that we put together that these guys put on at the local level. Those scholars. Right? What I'm saying is that you get installer out there, each county will have a list of certified installers, okay? And they're usually certified with the health department that they're kind of, the general county they work in. But if they're certified, they can work anywhere in the state of Kentucky, right? Doesn't just have to be from Grant County. You know, they have probably 4 or maybe one whole list with everybody on it. I don't know if y'all have this.
We've got kind of specialized county list.
Yeah. So, you know, they might throw a guy on there that does, you might be from, let's say he does a lot of work in Grant County. Right? But doesn't mean you can't go to the county next door. The one thing that I can tell you, or even a homeowner, thing that I would do, don't ever call one. Call multiple people on that list and get, you know, get a price. You got 1 or 2 that come in super high. You know, you got one that comes way off the chart and super low. Oh, what? But you can kind of get that midpoint of what they're thinking it's going to cost. Yeah, they got the information.
Go back to what he said about getting the price and all that. They really shouldn't be given a quote until they see it.
Right.
Until the site's been completely correct.
Because there might be some additional bells and whistles in my county that it wasn't required in 2 counties over.
Sure, yeah.
That could be the same way too. This could be my lot, that could be your lot. My lot might be really good, your lot. might be crap. I get calls on that all the time. I don't understand. Why is this lot crap? Why is it, it's just the way it works, okay? I don't know. If you go into the neighborhood and there's 2 or 3 lots there, you got it for a great deal. How do you think that is? What usually happens those lots? Well, you take a hit, and if you can't get something on this, then it might just be absorbed by the neighbor, just so you don't lose everything. So, half what you pay, just so they can add on to their half acre, and they can have a whole.
Can we open up to Bob or local areas, we open up for more questions and stuff, is maybe what's the best time to reach you? If you have questions, you're on, I know you guys are out in the field and stuff like that, or what they should do, compare the lot or site evaluation, or anything kind of local like that, for either one of them.
Yeah, so I'll talk about kind of what's required in this part here. I'll let Bob answer this part there. Me, I'm Monday through Friday. I work out of my home, but I'll be honest with you, with the amount of counties that I cover, the amount of training that we put through with new environmentalists, I'm on the road like 24/7. I'm always on the road. But I have a phone you can call, drop me a message, and drop me an email. I've got a card that I can hand out. And then I'll get back to you. But a lot of times you're not going to deal with me unless there's an issue. And you maybe had a swallow here, you think, hey, the local health department guy told me this, but I didn't like it. So I don't want you to be in tension. You might call me and be like, look, I'm not trying to go over your head. I'm not trying to piss the inspector off. You know, do this or that. Hear that all the time. And that's fine. But a lot of times we're going to deal with Bob. So Bob, he lives here. I don't know. I might come in this county. I don't know. If he ever has you do something, I go up once a year, maybe if that, if even that. So far, the 3 years we're doing this, I'm not doing this. So there you go. But he's here every day, so he knows a lot more about the internet than I do. But if you have questions, but he's probably going to know a lot more. Be on the ground. I don't know what's it. Every time that he does something, there's a file that's kept happening. There's not a filing system that you can tap into and go through. You can physically go to the health department. If you need a file, you need to pull something out of a jar or a file inspection of the existing, and you're going to deal with the local inspection.
Yeah, to answer your question, we have office hours in the morning between 8 and 9. That's about the only work there. We never leave before 9:30. Special people. I cover Boone and Grant County, so a lot of times I do some stuff in Boone till around lunchtime. Down in Grant County. But I usually check voicemails in between that transition, and we'll get back to as many people as I can. But you know, I will make a return.
Well, what about the side about getting a lot ready? It's something like, I know the paperwork and stuff like that, but I'm just trying to make it easy. What I've been through that I had to learn the hard way, like is when you come to your guys' office or something like that, or have lot ready or whatever. Can you just give a little bit of information about that?
Well, yeah, we but we added this onto our evaluation to see the highlight becoming a problem. The lot should be mowed or cleared before the evaluation, and the house location, property line should be marked. So that's basically what you need to do, is make sure it's mowed, not that we don't enjoy walking. I've got to be able to see how the land reads and all that.
It is hard. If you have something that's growing up high, you can't really see that topography on that lot, where it slopes and way things up. We have to identify things because we also have setbacks. You know, we can't get right up on everything, just go right through it, go right up. We have setbacks off of things, utilities, sinkholes, wells, foundations, all kinds of stuff to set off. So yeah, you want to have that lot set up. A lot of times when you come in and fill this out, you need to know, one, how many bedrooms is it going to be? Are they going to have a garbage disposal? Yes or no? Going to be a basement? Will there be a sub pump? Okay, because why? You put a sub pump in the basement, it brings it back up to the main level, and it might be able to grab the flow. If it's not, then if you come in too low in the basement, you might have to pump to have a dosing tank added on to pump that line up, right? So things like that you want to know. When you provide me a drawing, hold on, I'll get to you. When you provide us a drawing of that lot, you can put directions on there. You can bring in an aerial view. You can bring in a copy of the plat if it's got one. Or you can just take a piece of paper and draw it and bring it in. But we want to know where the house is going to sit. Okay? Because when he goes out there to auger his hose, if he goes out there and augers his hose and goes out there planting my stakes right here in the middle of it, I just got to come back out and redo it. Okay? That does happen. It happens all the time. Okay? We want to know where it doesn't have to be inch per inch where the house is exactly going to be. If you plant 4 stakes, you know, where's the driveway coming off this roadway is coming straight in, like a left. Do you think there might be a deep extra? There might be above ground pool. We want to know because wow, we put a septic system inside the house, in front of the house, the back of the house, whatever. And just because we go to the back doesn't mean we're dead set. That's where it's going to go. You might dig back there and then it's kind of crap. Let's go to the front city. That's the can't go to the front. Hey, this is there. You can put a system back in here, but you got another option up here. Dead set on what the house is going. You know, I know there's building setbacks, which is like 50 foot off the road. But we do have utility setbacks, you know, overhead setbacks, driveway, foundation setbacks, basement setbacks. Like that. So it does matter. So we need kind of a detailed configuration when you come in, what you're doing. Okay? That way we know when we go out to auger, we auger 4 holes of value. We base our system off the first hole that we evaluate. And then that's what you get when we go from there. Right? We always try to give 3 options. If the site's so limited, we only give 2, we'll give 2. Right? But we'll give 3. Doesn't mean there can't be 6 or 7 options. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Earlier you mentioned drawings on existing structure. How far back do you have drawn? Because some.
Yes, you won't have anything. So if Bob's got a file in there, doesn't mean it's a great drawing, doesn't mean we'll have a drawing in there at all. I would say probably the mid-90s drawings probably started to get a little bit better. You can go in there about then. Before then, might not. Might be a 55-gallon drum. See those before. You know, it might be 5 foot deep. Well, couldn't tell you. We just try to do the best we can. We go out there, we try to do our due diligence and probe and find where it's at. Okay? If we can't find where it's at, we might have somebody come out there and say, hey, I want you to at least unearth the tank so I can see it. We're not going to unearth, unless there's an issue, we won't unearth the box. If there is one, we're not going to unearth the lattice. Once again, if it ain't broke, we ain't fixed. Yes.
So I don't mean it's kind of like starting to see new or hydrogen tanks. What's the process to getting there? That's just.
He's talking what he's talking about.
Talking about Brad's already.
Yeah, Brad's. Yeah, so the systems that particular house has permitted through division of water.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second.
So, and what happens was I visited that line, said, you have no good options. And so I wrote referral that I fill out. And I give it to him. he goes through all the bells and whistles for the division of water, they do all the permitting, all the review and all that stuff. And so they put one of those types of systems.
That's
No,
what you guys say. No.
they get permitted through division of water and get nothing to do with it.
If we have an option, doesn't mean it's a good option, but
Well, that's a good, I was going to follow up with that by saying, so just, if you say no to a site evaluation, like this isn't possible, then you can be referred. You can be referred on, right?
so on
That
that
what you're
form, you go ahead and.
Yeah, I mean, if you have other options for septic, whether it be a fill and wait type system, a lagoon type system, or some other type of approved Kentucky system that will work on that lot, then you pretty well gotta have to do that. On these smaller little lots like that, where there's, you have options, you know.
Yeah, if you have limited soil depth or space restriction, all that criteria starts to meet up, works its way out. We've tried everything we can refer you to the Division of Water. Okay? You have options. I don't like,
So
I think it's from us.
my question is, how do we get to that? And maybe I don't know that answer.
Yeah, if you start with me, to make a determination on what your best options would be for a septic. If they're not really that great, I'll tell you what they are, and I'll also do that referral. It doesn't mean they have to approve. You just, you know,
Yeah, they can turn you down. It's ultimately up to them. If we send that on, they're supposed to pull our paper from Pikeville to Paducah. That's the way we teach. We don't go in there and go, well, I don't like it. Down at the school pipe crack. It's not as bad as you think. I don't know what you think it is. That's far from you. I've seen, we had a picture of it out of Muhlenberg County. Chris had a better story, but I was with Chris on one. So there was an RV park that threw us. Yeah. Okay. You can't tell, but what I'm saying is that they want to say, okay, we'll send it on. If you have an option that's supposed to like it, they're not supposed to accept it. You just have to kind of deal with what that. I'm not saying it's a good option either. Okay? We can't verify, well, yeah, this is going to work. It's going to work for this long. Fine. If you have options, that's the way it works. But if you don't, we fill out that form and send Art his documentation with it. They can either be or not. And we'll turn that down and go with it. That we are subsurface.
Thank you for that valuable information. We got time for about 2 or 3 more questions.
I was just gonna say, Division of Water is surface discharge. We are subsurface. With spray irrigation, you can have it. Overflow belongs to them. But if there is overflow, laterals behind it, belongs to us. Go ahead. Yes,
Instead of
like private water. Okay. Like well water. Well, that's not so much tested as well water. Yeah.
we do some cisterns testing. There is no regulation for private water. So when we do a cistern inspection, we just go out, report the conditions of the cistern. We look to see if the gutters are tied into it, not if they're in good shape, what the lid looks like. And then we might do a water sample. That sample's taken to a lab and they've got their standards where they'll say if it's good or bad.
Yeah, it's more, that probably, it's rare, but I mean, they do that. Most of it's usually a water test, and it's gotta be collected, it's sent off in 24 hours, it's sent up to our state lab. And they test it for general bacteria and then for E. coli. So if you're around the farm, it's got a bunch of pesticides and stuff like that, that's, ours is only general bacteria, and then E. coli, and that's it. And if any of it pops off, it's a positive. Didn't really want to talk about that. 3 real quick things. We can either do a D light. If those lights are out, you go to these plumbing supply places. Sometimes if that light's blown out, they put them on there. What does that light do? It kills that bacteria. Right? Number 2, you have chlorine. Something's messed up with it. Those places actually, when Nelson's, Ferguson's, Master Supply, places like that, they know a little bit more about well testing as far as general information, and they can supply you with products to help clean all out. Maybe the chlorinator's in bad shape. The final option is just like municipal. If you have county water available, just have to fire it. If that's the deal. But a positive test, even if it has one, no part water, thousands. Had one part per million. It's considered a positive test, right?
One last question.
You ever been around system? Smell.
Yeah, so,
So what's happening? Is it failing? Just the ground's got so.
well, maybe it's so saturated, fail, so right about this time of year, we normally have a system that can be dried out in the summer, it can fail in the winter times. Why? Maybe it's because there's a lot of ground. We do have something that's called a curtain drain, which is installed around the system, it diverts groundwater away from the system, brings out daylight, diverts it away. Okay? A lot of times when you talk about going out and smelling, gray water, it's gotta be tied into the system. There is no doubt. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it's probably all right. It's not that big a deal.
You only smell it when it's raining and go to the ground, so
Saturated, which might,
doesn't mean you're not.
doesn't mean you're necessarily failing, yeah. But it's one of those deals where if you feel like it's a possibility, or you are, you tend to just year after year that just continues to happen, might be something you want to look at, because maybe something's not always, but something might be. But once again, gray water has to be tied into the system. Kitchen sinks, a lot of times we do these existing systems, if you find, I've gone out and found kitchen sink drains that run out on top of the ground, laundry lines, take them out and back 40 and dump them out, like we did back in the day, right? You can smell those soap suds when you're out there. You can smell them. It's got to be tied into the system.
Isn't all those bad for you?
It is, it's not good for your tank, because what it will do, it beats down on the bacteria, but you can no longer put it out on top of the ground.
Thanks, Bob and Jake. This is great information for homeowners and brokers. We appreciate it very much. And thank you everyone for your time this evening. We hope you found the program informative. And share our final session in June 1st in Mason County Extension Center. Share with your friends. That'll be our last session for septic systems and such. We'll be there again first of June. Veronica, I want to thank Veronica for a lot. She put all these together, Dr. Father, her coordinated and everything. Thank you very much. And we'll need to pull out the winner.
So I got the ticket in for county. Oh.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you please take some cookies.
I didn't pick up on because they were last time, but you went to University of Conference.
I did, yes.
So did I.
Did you?
But
So I went.
long before you did.
So it was probably the Indians.
College.
Yes.
My husband
I was
graduated.
there when I was coming to college and they flipped it while I was there. So yes.
And my husband graduated.
Okay.
We got married out at Penn State University. So I'm from that part of Kentucky.
So Williamsburg? Yeah. So that's, so yeah, because I always bring that up. I'm like, it's crazy. But so, but it's probably pretty easy. So I went from 04 to graduate in 08. I played football. Yeah. Okay. So for me, it was the Indians. Right. Yes. Yeah. 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 So now when I was there, it was switched over to Patriots. So now it's really changed. Taylor. Yeah.
Taylor.
gonna say he left. That whole place, even to now, when I went through it, it's completely changed. Like the big thing was going down there, when I was there, is it was done and completed and operated. But that water park had just come in a few years before we got there. So I'm talking like right at like early 2000. Now when you go through there, there's no hill, it's completely gone. Look down on the field, the off ramp is completely changing. The old hotel, Williamsburg hotels. You know, the health department's actually, they built it on the side of the hill. I mean, it's completely changed.
Was Megan there?
Yes. I don't know how. I don't know how. Yeah, well, our first year, we always used to say, well, if this thing doesn't give way, you know, our families can't ever say you didn't do anything right. We gave it the old try, and now they get a big loss. So, yeah, because it's a. I thought they said
Oh, my
it's
gosh.
structurally,
That's
sound.
so.
Yes. See these names sound familiar. I mean, I don't.
You were there.
Yeah.